we're going to start with the quarterbacks. And we're going to do this. 6 quarterbacks were taken in the first round. Spencer Rattler was a rookie quarterback that played this season as well. But we're going to just talk about those 4 first-rounders that have started this season. Michael Penix. But we are going to start with 1-1, a guy that got that G word thrown at him a few times. I don't like to say generational. I like to say purple chips, which means a very good prospect. But Caleb Williams, pick number 1 with the Bears. Bears have gone through a season of hell. They fired their offensive coordinator, fired their head coach. It's just a mess over there in Chicago. Caleb is kind of had an up and down season, I would say. Throwing out some stats here. I'm usually going to use some success rate and EPA to kind of paint the picture of these guys. Try to really parse it without garbage time as well. And I'll talk about that. Garbage time, you can do this on True Media. But I try to throw those out as well, whether a team was getting blown out or they were blowing the other team out. Because a couple of the quarterbacks kind of benefited from that. But I'll talk about them in a sec. But Caleb takes a lot of sacks. I'll say that's the start with Caleb Williams. But he is 27th in EPA per dropback overall, 23rd in dropback success rate, and 20th in throwing success rate. So when he does throw the ball, he is 20th, which actually is a little better than I was expecting. He had a nice chunk of games before the Bears bye week. Can get a little sloppy there in the middle, and he's had some positive moments, I'd say, the last couple of weeks under Thomas Brown, but it hasn't all been consistent. But Matt, with Caleb Williams, because I know your strength, I shouldn't say your strength, your forte is with receivers. I'm sure you've watched plenty of Roman Dunze, but really, you watch all these offensive skill guys a ton, especially with your background. So when you have been watching Caleb Williams and watching him during this rookie season, what are some of your takeaways so far? Some positives, some weaknesses? Has he been disappointing? Has he lived up to expectations? Probably not. But all those types of things. What have been your thoughts so far on Caleb Williams through the first 3 months of his rookie season?
Yeah, obviously, I think you got to talk about just what you mentioned at the season from hell that the Bears are having here. Thomas Brown, the current interim head coach, is on his 3rd job with the team. That is not exactly. I always talk about rookie quarterbacks. What's the soil that they get to grow in? Yeah. Where they plant their roots and then sprout and the whole deal. You get the analogy. This is not the best soil in the world for Caleb Williams to be putting down his early career roots.
Chernobyl soil.
Oh yeah, I mean it really is like the nightmare scenario that I do a show with Andy Barron's a Bears fan. Used to do the show with Robert. He's a Bears fan. Every Bears fan knows the story of like just what the Bears always do. It's draft new quarterback, the lame duck coach, fire coach, rookie quarterback on his new team. It's a second, the whole cycle on and on and on. And it's like that was kind of you could see that nightmare scenario coming before the year if you were familiar with just the way the Bears operate. And like now we are firmly in that timeline because that's what's going to happen here with Caleb. It's going to be a whole new staff next year and we'll see what happens. But for this year, I definitely think there have been clear ups and downs. And he's a great example of why when we talk about rookies, we do want it to map really cleanly over the course of their rookie season, especially with receivers. And you kind of get sometimes you get this clean split of first half of the year. And then like after their bye week, they start trending up. Like you said, teams figure out roles and deployment and usage on all that stuff. It's not quite as clean with quarterbacks. Like progression is not linear with these guys. And even when it was okay, Shane Waldron's out of the building. Like he has this great game against it was the Vikings. He had a great game against the Vikings where was pretty mistake free, pushed the ball down the field. But then of course, like the first half of the Lions game on Thanksgiving was kind of a disaster. Picks back up in the second half. They get close, but then he has some real serious operational, him and Eberflus together have some real serious operational errors towards the end of the game. And that's all we're talking about. In this Niners game this last week, I thought the first half was just putrid. Like I just don't think he was seeing the field. I don't think he was confident in the protection, and you just got a lot of pass game. Like this was the thing. He's like, you can get Shane Waldron out of the building, but Thomas Brown, especially now that he's on his 3rd job with the team, like I said, he's not about to come in there and like change up the route concepts and some of this messiness where the spacing sucks and the receivers are all in the same area and like routes aren't building off of each other.
Practice times.
Exactly. Like, so that's what it felt like. It felt like an offense to me that was extremely disorganized. And I think the quarterback he's a rookie. He is not at the point where he can just be even if he's like the emotional leader of the team, and I don't know that type of stuff, if he's like the Pied Piper type, remember that Baker Mayfield analogy coming in like with Hugh Jackson, he was the Pied Piper or whatever. Like even if he was that guy, everybody's following him and that deal, like he still isn't ready to just carry the entire operation of a very, very disorganized offense. So I think we've seen a lot of promising moments from Caleb. I think we've seen a lot of concerning moments, things that, when there is a new staff in there and hopefully things are cleaned up, like we've got the one thing I would say just about him that's been really tough to reckon with is the fact that he seems very hesitant to pull the trigger sometimes, which I don't know if that is a thing that has been coached into him by this staff and like a defensive head coach of, hey, just don't turn the ball over and be average on offense because our defense is good. Well, your defense is actually not that good this year. And that was sort of, again, the faultiness of this pairing all along, because I think that's a guy that should be really, if he's confident in what he's seeing and feeling the way the offense is structured, like hit that back foot and let it rip, man. But I think that's been my biggest kind of disappointment with Caleb is that he seemed a little bit more hesitant to pull the trigger than I would have hoped.
I'm with you totally on that. I'll start kind of like with the negatives of Caleb is that taking way too many sacks right now. And I know a lot of people want to bring up the Bears offensive line. I actually think the Bears offensive line is okay. Not good, but it's not an atrocity. It really isn't. I actually think they've been okay. There's times Coleman Shelton, the center, will lose in pass protection, or one of the guards, or Tevin Jenkins will get sloppy. Like one guy will lose, and that, like I said, it's not a great offensive line. But when I watch him, there's a lot of times there's some clean pockets for him to operate out of, and stuff where he can go through his progressions and everything. I think, and right now he has a sack rate of 11%, which is 32nd in the NFL amongst quarterbacks. Qualifying quarterbacks is the term I'll use. Second highest pressure to sack rate in the NFL right now. That is kind of concerning for me, where he was middle of the pack in this in college, and he would take some sacks, but he was always trying some stuff. But 31% right now is absurdly high. And like I said before, I do not think all of that can be attributed to the offensive line. Some of it, but not all of it. There's times where he is stubborn in the pocket, and I do think this is going to be good for him in the long term, and I appreciate what he's trying to do. He sits in that pocket, and he tries to progress, and it is truly 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, and like you said, so this is kind of piggybacking off of what you said, sometimes I just want him to try a throw. 1 to 2, throw it. Throw a guy open. Throw a guy that, oh yeah, it's not clean, it's a little messy, throw it open, give him a shot. I think there's too many times that he is trying to make it a little too clean for himself, which is the irony of how he was described, or the paradox of how he was described coming in, which is always what I thought there was a disconnect of how he actually plays, because I actually thought he was really good in the pocket, which is why I liked him so much. He's 27th right now in tight window throw rate. And that has, and you could say some of that is the receivers, and I do think there is that really, okay. I just said the offensive line is not as bad as it is, as we would think it is. I will say that the receiver concerns are very real, which is, it's more not the talent, it's more the details. There was a 3-play sequence against the 49ers where it was a Keenan Allen drop, and then I want to say a Roman Dunze drop, and then a Roman Dunze, either Roman Dunze or Cole Kmet messed up a mesh route, and you had 3 guys running into the same spot on mesh.
Oh, that was a mess. I can't remember exactly whose fault it was either, but it was all 4 of them were in like kind of a box in the middle of the field,
in a circle.
Yeah. I mean, Kmet has been like he gets really lauded as like a big lifetime locker room guy. I know they talk about like him and Caleb's friendship and stuff like that, but he has been kind of like a net negative player at times for them.
He's a losing player. And I know he's a big leader, and he's having meetings with coordinators and coaches. He does radio and stuff. Like, I am disappointed in Cole Kmet. I don't think he's a reliable player at all. Whether it's drops, I think that Vikings game, he had a huge drop. He dropped the 2-point play in this game against the 49ers. He has other plays in run blocking where he's going to the wrong guy. And this guy's supposed to be a smart, sound team. He's supposed to be like, Cole Kmet's not going to be a freak, but he's supposed to be solid in everything. Pretty good receiver, pretty good route runner, pretty good hands, pretty good blocker. But he's also supposed to be this reliable guy that always does the right thing. And then I just think in the last couple of weeks, how many drops and important moments he has where he's blocking the wrong guy. He might be running the wrong route sometimes. Yeah, there's a disconnect on the Cole Kmet. And that's really kind of what the Bears are at right now, is they thought these vets are going to be coming to be the winning players, and they're the ones making the mistakes. Like a rookie making a mistake, like Roman Duze running a wrong route or having a drop. Okay, rookie receiver. Yeah, vets that get paid money. Yeah, those are the guys that are supposed to be lifting everybody else up when the rookies have their moments. But again, I don't want to put this all on the receivers and the pass catchers because I do think Caleb can at times try a throw, try to push this ball. And there's times like the second half of the Vikings game, the second half of the Lions game where he does. And even the 4 weeks before their bye, and I wrote about it where I was like, hey, this is looking like the real deal before everything, the whole bottom came out of this whole entire franchise. Where he was thrown with confidence. They're running a bunch of empty. He's progressing. He's ripping through those throws. So I just think that those are the things that I just want to see a little bit more of him trying some stuff. But the underlying stuff that I see, it's all good. Like it really is. Like I don't have concerns about his accuracy. I know off-target throw percentage was getting thrown out there. He was throwing the ball away. I think some of those tight windows, he was trying some stuff where he's trying to save a hit or something like that. So that hasn't been concerning for me, like accuracy or anything like that. But I will say that him trying some throws is really the one thing I want to see more of the last month of the season, especially. But yeah, overall, I still think he's very live. His arm is really good.
It's a really desirable job. Like if I was a head coach, I mean, obviously everybody talks about Ben Johnson. I don't know if Ben Johnson's going to want to go near the Bears or anything like that. But if I was like organizational agnostic, like which I obviously Ben Johnson is not. That he seems very in tune with that, and he should be. Smart by him. But just like insert promising offensive coordinator X. I would be like, I want to work with this quarterback and cut some of the fat out of the offense that we've talked about a lot this year and just try to revive this guy. I'd be interested in doing it.
Yep. Last thing was the pocket movement was good. The operation stuff has been impressive for me with Caleb, but then that's also back to the point of, was it bad to put so much on a rookie and making him be perfect as opposed to just letting him play, which is like what we see about to talk about Jayden Daniels, letting him play and play to his strengths. And I think long-term it's good for Caleb, but maybe that's why there's so much ups and downs because they put so much on him. He handles protections like a vet, and that's really encouraging. But there are just stuff that he, of course, has to improve upon. So, but he does have some real talent. Going on to the one that probably has the best underlying stats so far and really was even getting MVP talk for the first half of the season, which I thought was a little outlandish, but has played very well as a rookie. Pretty much anything you can hope for this franchise right now. Number 2 selection, that is Jayden Daniels, who has leading the surprising Commanders. And he's really just done a really fine job, I really think, of playing the quarterback position. But before I dive into it, I'll just lay out some stats. 7th in EPA per dropback overall, 10th in dropback success rate, 13th in throwing success rate, 24th in sack rate, which I'll talk about in a sec. But that is something that I actually think has been okay. Scrambles the most of any quarterback in the NFL, which I'll also talk about. But when you've been watching Jayden Daniels this year, this Commanders offense, what's impressed you about him? What are some of your takeaways with Daniels, Matt?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think there's been so many positive takeaways here. And yeah, there's definitely some areas that in the second half of the season against better competition that, some issues have cropped up. Some of the pressure to sack stuff, especially when he's been dealing with this rib injury, I think was an issue, and him like really confidently stepping into throws and pushing it downfield. But at the same time, man, I think this is a great sort of comparison between Caleb and Jayden Daniels, especially because coming into the season, it was Caleb Williams, Bears, best situation we've ever seen a rookie quarterback walk into, number 1 overall pick quarterback because of these wide receivers and this, that, and the other. What's like, well, there was still a lot of rot underneath the, really well painted exterior of the house or whatever. There was some real stuff there that was concerning beyond just, hey, we have a lot of good pass catchers. And what I love about Jayden Daniels and in this situation is that he clearly has a guy. And doesn't have to talk about like not putting too much on a rookie's shoulders. I think Daniels it's not as if he's not carrying the burden of the offense because so much of what this offense is built around, in my opinion, is like, what does Jayden Daniels do well, which is he can get the ball out quickly when he's confident in the picture and he will push it downfield. But he doesn't have like a bunch of egos to worry about satisfying, which I do think is an issue in Chicago. It's like, all right, let me build great chemistry with this one guy. And I think him and Terry McLaurin's connection has been one of the best in the league. That's what's been so impressive to me is you can clearly tell these guys have a lot of time on task together. Jayden throws it like Terry wants it. Terry is in the right places. They're just making magic on these vertical routes outside the numbers in tight coverage situations, but also like Terry McLaurin's one of the most productive receivers against zone coverage as well, which I think has been maybe a bit more than people thought out of Jayden Daniels. I think he reads zone coverage well and operates well over like maybe a little bit more over the middle of the field than people thought about. I think they could still use probably
I'll say right now that I think
Sure.
he pushes it better over the middle of the field than I thought he would be able to right away. Maybe you get there later in his career, but he's been more impressive as a rookie than he was in college, I think. But yeah.
And he's pushing it to like, Zach Ertz and Noah Brown. Okay.
Yeah,
so
right. Zach
those
Ertz
are like
falls
his
forward for 1 yard.
those are like his middle of the field weapons. So yeah, I mean, I'm really, again, there's some nitpick areas and things like that, but I don't know how you can't come out of this season feeling really optimistic about Jayden Daniels. And I'm curious what this looks like if he takes a second-year leap and they add more talent around him.
Yeah, I'll get into concerns in a sec, but man, he is just so smart with the football. And I know Washington fans got so shaky with me when I was like, man, he really does have a lot of Teddy Bridgewater in him. I meant that as a real compliment because I think that Jayden is so accurate and makes a lot of good sound decisions, especially outside. I mean, you just mentioned the Terry stuff. It's not just go balls, but and this is how he was in college. And I attributed some of it to his receivers, but it's carried over so far, even when he's not throwing to Terry. When he's throwing to freaking, like you just brought up Noah Brown or Diami Brown or Zacchaeus on the outside, that he peppers them. Like he throws it outside consistently, which is what you want to do. He'll throw it low and away when he has to. Like, he can, even when the guy's tightly covered, like those slants to Terry McLaurin in the red zone are on point. And slant throws are, yes, your day one throws, but being really good at them is a really good thing because your baseline's going to be high. And I think that Jayden's baseline is always going to be so high because he's so accurate and he's smart with the football. You mentioned the quick throwing motion. I think that's a big part of that. He's a dynamite runner, which is what it was to be expected, but I had concerns because of his weight. I didn't think he was a creative runner, as much as like Lamar is, or even like a Josh Allen. But man, I as a runner, he hasn't been taking a lot of big hits, and he's been smart about it. He is also he can get to the edge more consistently than I thought maybe he could against NFL athletes. He's got real juice, but it's been even more efficient at that than I thought maybe early in his career. And I think, like I said, avoiding sacks early in the season is kind of caught up to him. Great mention of the rib injury. I would say maybe some areas for like I would like to see him improve a little bit is expand his aggression outside of just go balls. Maybe some more digs and like that's more the intermediate stuff. But again, like you said, he's flashed it a little bit more benders and more stuff over the middle. But again, go like that. He skews right as a passer a lot. He doesn't really throw to the left. Sure. It's kind of such a weird thing. Like when you look at his target maps, and that's more just like a quirk than something that's like, oh, you're really going to catch him. I would say when he gets pressured or when he gets blitzed, that I like to see him push the ball more, throw the ball more, as opposed to just looking to run. And right now, that's fine. He is winning as a runner, but when pressured, he's 8th in dropback success rate. Okay, that very, very good. That is great to see as a quarterback. 20th in throwing success rate. So that's a big dropbacks include sacks and scrambles. Throwing is just when they throw the ball. So when he is pressured, he has a 25% scramble rate and he has a 26% sack rate. So that means when he is pressured, Jayden Daniels, over half the time, he's either getting sacked or he's sacked or he is scrambling. And it's the highest rate in True Media's database, which goes back to 2019 for pressures. Don't get me wrong, though. He's successful as a scrambler, 68%, which is very good. It's just that long-term viability. Got to tone that down just a little bit. You just Lamar was like this early, young in his career, and now he's found a nice balance where it's more in that teens, 12% scramble rate against when you're pressured, somewhere around there. But it's working for him right now, and he's finding a way to win on those. So, but I will say when he's pressured, just want to see him maybe throw on the move a little bit more, keep his eyes downfield. Don't always just look for running lanes when he feels the pressure or on third and longs. Again, it's working for him now, just more long-term viability, and with his frame and everything. But man, it's been impressive. Like I even was looking at stats, like I was like, okay, maybe they do a lot of play action, they use a lot of screens, and maybe that's bumping up his stats. Non-screen, non-play actions, 5th in EPA per dropback, 10th in success rate. So the eye test is matching this. Is it to the highs of maybe with the MVP hype? No, but this is a good player. And I've been very, very impressed by how his avoidance of bad plays and a lot of the stacked up good plays. So, yeah.
You know who I think he could learn from as a pressure player? This is weird. It's going to sound so stupid just because of what this guy did as a rookie, but I've been so impressed with the way Bryce Young has played under pressure the last, like, obviously 4 games or whatever. And it's a lot of what I'd like to see from Jayden Daniels do, which is just, okay, you're pressured, you immediately look to readjust, step up in the pocket, like maybe boot out a little to the right and just keep the eyes downfield. And if nothing is there, then you take off, like as a last resort. I feel like Bryce has like 5 yard, like 5 yard last resort scrambles a game right now. Whereas obviously those plays could be like 10, 15 yarders for Jayden Daniels, but like take that one last beat to sort of push the ball downfield if there's something there. But again, I always come back to, I want them to have one more guy beyond McLaurin that I think on those scramble drills are he could rely on. I was skeptical of Luke McCaffrey who they took in the 3rd round, and his playing time has been all over the place. There's no like clean progression there. I almost kind of would like to see a player like that, and I kind of like some of what I've seen from him in very, very limited glimpses. So maybe they're coming out of their bye this week. Maybe we see more of that. I don't know, but again, one more guy maybe could help this problem too. Yeah,
and no offense to Ertz, but it's a good tight end class. Maybe a tight end on day 2. Because Jayden seems like a guy that would obviously he's peppering Ertz. Like that's kind of his thing. Like when he does throw, when he feels pressure, he likes to throw those little 4 or 5 yarders over, and his quick throwing motion lets him get to him. So like that, just a nice big body that can just sit there and maybe actually create something after the catch. Maybe juice those up a little bit more. But and I mentioned that too, is that he's been avoiding the big shots. The sack rate has climbed up. He's 24th in sack rate. That is going to be something that you're always going to keep an eye on with him because it was such a high number in college that was a huge red flag of how it would carry over. But again, he's middle of the pack, pressure the sack rate, which is a more encouraging, I think, that it's like, okay, it doesn't have to be the best of the best. Like he doesn't have to be freaking Peyton Manning or prime Tom Brady, but just where it's not a Justin Fields number or a Daniel Jones thing where it's like he's taking too many sacks and it's just kneecapping the whole offense. So I would say that just the fact that hasn't been 32nd is encouraging, but even if it's drift off a little bit after the rib injury, like you mentioned. So, but you gotta be happy if you're Commanders fan. He's been really fun to watch, and I just love the decision making with him. I don't want to say, I was about to say something. He's better than this quarterback, but there's a quarterback in this division that I think he's playing better than, and he's a rookie, and the other guy's getting paid $50 million. It's not the guy that's hurt, though, and it's not the guy that was benched. So I'll let you guys do the math. All right. Now, moving on to the 3rd overall pick, that is Drake Maye, who started the year on the bench behind Jacoby Brissett before getting the nod, and he's had a really, I think, impressive stretch since he has taken over. He's 18th in EPA per dropback, 13th in dropback success rate, 12th in throwing success rate. I think that's the best of the rookies. 2nd in scramble rate, only behind Jayden Daniels. 1st in scramble yards, 4th in scramble success rate. Sack rate is fairly high, which is, I think it's about 9%, which again is a cause for concern. But this one is a little bit of the offensive line or a lot of it the offensive line. But I don't want to dive right into it. I'm going to let you go first, Matt Harmon, about Drake Maye, New England Patriots quarterback. What are your thoughts so far about him?
Yeah, obviously I'm not going to sit here and pander to you and Drake Maye. I actually think he's looked terrible. No, I'm
just awful. What am I thinking?
He's been really promising, man. And especially in the situation that he's in where, we're talking about maybe Caleb Williams has too many guys. Maybe Jayden Daniels needs one more guy. How about a guy for Drake Maye? A guy. It's been really impressive to watch him operate, and it's not quite like this player because, Andrew Luck had such a great rookie season, but he had certainly a lot more guys to rely on. I always kind of thought of Andrew Luck's rookie season of they just dropped him behind enemy lines and hey, shoot your way out, buddy. That is basically what Drake Maye has to do every single week because it's not even as if like all right, we're the Patriots and we rely on our defense. Like their defense is whatever this year, like objectively bad at times. And Drake Maye's just kind of keeping whether the results are, wins, whatever. I think they're never truly like embarrassed offensively. And I think a lot of that is because of what he does. The creation is really strong. He's willing to push the ball down the field. He's obviously adding value as a scrambler. There's a lot to like here, man. And again, I just think if I'm them, I'm going all out to, build the offensive line, to get at least one, probably two starting receivers in the mix here, because every single week, if I was a member of this team, I'd be watching Drake Maye and thinking we've got something here. And like we owe it to ourselves to build that up.
Yeah, I think their messaging has been the same thing. Like they're just kind of going, yeah, we got a guy. Like they just went from like, oh, we'll see how he's going, and like to like straight up Mayo just going, no, we got a guy. So now we just got to build around him, which is, of course you want to kind of take what they're saying. Oh yeah. No, I'm with you. The surroundings, much has been made about it. That's why they didn't even want to trot him out there early on, because the offensive line was so poor. He has the 5th highest rate of quick QB pressures. So just ones that have just happened quick, according to Next Gen Stats. And again, he has a 9% sack rate, which I attribute some of that to that. But I thought he would be a little more chaotic early on in as a rookie, especially with these surroundings. And he's like been way more calm than even, and I was so optimistic about May. Obviously he was my QB1, my number one overall player going to this draft. But he is a little bit even more polished with his decision making than I was anticipating. I thought that he'd have more chaotic plays. Obviously, he had plays like and against the Titans and all that stuff where he's running around, doing all that stuff. But as far as just like against the blitz, he's just more just sitting in the pocket and working underneath a lot more. He's not just chucking it deep. And I think that's really encouraging. I know how good of a deep ball thrower he is and an intermediate ball thrower that he is. So the fact that he's kind of winning with nickel and diming, or finding throws like he did against the Colts, like all those outbreakers to the tight ends, and he's just putting them on the money over and over. I think just that consistency has been like a pleasant surprise for me. I thought it'd be a little more volatile early on in his career, and then he kind of figures it out. So like I said, he has the highest throwing success rate. You take out garbage time, I think it's the highest just straight up drop back success rate of all these guys. Like his underlying stats aren't just eye test. Ooh, I like the traits. Again, he's first in scramble yards too. So it's this nice combination of he's finding the way to move the ball consistently. I know the big plays are there. It's just going to be a lot better without Kayshon Boutte being your deep ball threat and the corpse of Jalen Polk working underneath. God. Well, we'll talk about Jalen Polk probably later, but
we don't have to. I mean, the Kayshon Boutte thing is so crazy because this is the guy that, considering who's going to be on the field in week 1, he wasn't on the field in week 1 at all. All throughout like training camp, he wasn't really mentioned as one of the top like X receiver candidates, and he's basically their every down X receiver, which is. I was not that big of a fan of Kayshon Boutte coming out of college. So, I mean, that has been, and I don't think
inconsistent. Yeah. Not my favorite.
Yeah. Right. For real. And his ADOT is like by far the highest on the team. So, I mean, that's what we're talking about here. I love your point about how steady it's been for him. It's not like I really thought that and I wasn't as high on Drake Maye as you were, but I was probably more pro Drake Maye than not. And I thought that what we'd have to be doing coming out of his rookie season was, I know that he's like 28th in this metric and 29th in this metric, but you got to watch the games. You actually just have to watch it. Really, there's been more of that with the first quarterback we talked about here with Caleb Williams. And again, ironic just considering the way these two situations were discussed, but 50th reminder of the week that we don't know. Okay, like until the games actually start. But really, yeah, you don't have to do that much coping with the Drake Maye stuff because the results are just really good. I'm curious, as somebody who's a huge appreciator of Drake Maye, if you could pick me a type of receiver that you want to work with, or you want him to work with, because I get it. Like this is pretty much a blank slate to me. Like you go into next off season and okay, maybe Polk gives us something in training camp. Maybe Javon Baker shows us something in the whoop-de-doo. That would be gravy. I think it's a true blank slate in the pass catcher room. If you could pick like a type of receiver for Drake Maye to work with, who would it be?
Big ball winner named T. Higgins.
Okay. All right. So we're on the same page here because every time somebody's like, T. Higgins, you are a Charger. I'm like, no. He needs to be whatever the like blank check. The Patriots should give it to him.
Yeah, and I think the rumor's already out that they're going to basically back up the Brinks trucks and figure it out how to get T. Higgins, because I think that's the plan. I think it's you draft linemen and try and figure out how to get Higgins on your team, and then maybe sign another receiver or draft another pass catcher in the middle rounds, so like a third round tight end or something like that. I think. Obviously, I'm always going to defer to big ball winners, but Maye gives his receivers chances. And like, that's why I want a big body that he's going to, that's what Burrow does so well too. Maye and Burrow aren't too much alike, but the fact that they're going to be aggressive when they can, and they're going to give their guy a shot at the ball. And I think that's why I want a guy that can take advantage of those shots, like is a T. Higgins. And I think that's perfect. In the draft, it'd be like that Tet McMillan from Arizona, who's a big body and maybe not as fast as Higgins, but actually I think has better speed than he's been getting rated for. But that big size, big body guy, like that's what I want to see. If not that, then a true downfield threat. Because it's, and which I'm hoping like Higgins, a guy like Higgins is both, but like if you weren't able to get that 6'4" guy, that ideal X, I think if you got a true burner, like not just a speed guy, but a true guy that can take the top off and come down with the ball, that is, Alec Pierce, but like a guy that could take the top off like that, because we haven't seen that from him this year. And that's what's so exciting, is that the thing that got me so excited about him coming into the pros is something we haven't even tapped into yet, is that big ball, the big plays. Like, and that's what he is able to drive the ball 15 to 25 yards or further, as well as anyone I've rated, coming out as a prospect. And that's what I'm excited to see. Right now, he's like, I got tight ends. All right, I'm going to try and make this work. I'll nickel and dime with a bunch of out throws. And so it's cool that he's working with what he's got. But I think idealistically, a bigger body or a speed burner would truly unlock what he's really good at, which is he's a walking, talking big play machine. So, yeah, I don't know. I've been really impressed. I've been trying to kind of temper expectations as more data get out there. But like you said, like it's not like Trevor Lawrence's rookie year, where it's like, hey guys, trust me. It's not, that's like you said, it's more like that's how Caleb is, the discussion on Caleb. Here, it's like, I can point at stats. I can, they run a lot of screens, but they don't use a lot of play action. Like he's asked to drop back and progress. And I actually thought even the operation stuff, which is, again, while I was high on him coming into the pros, I thought he was underrated in. I think he handles, there's some protection awareness that he's actually better at. They've actually given him some keys to that. And also like he's really good with cadence stuff already, which is always an encouraging sign that he's able to change up his cadence and get guys to jump off sides. He's going on like a triple cadence sometimes. So that shows that he's understanding the play, and now he can do the little minutia things, the little things, I should say, that kind of open up and really expand you as a quarterback. So yeah, again, I've been impressed with him. I'm super high on him, if you guys can't tell, but I just think it's been really fun to watch him. I'm excited to watch this last month and just see what else he's got. Going on to Mr. Bo Nix, taken by the Broncos. He was the 6th quarterback taken, but the 4th starter of this group. Bo Nix has led the Broncos into a winning season. They look like they have a huge game against the Colts this week, which will really decide that kind of last playoff spot. But Nix has been, where are those stats at? I had him somewhere in here. He is 22nd in EPA per dropback, 22nd in dropback success rate. He is 29th in success rate on throws. And he has, 10th in scramble rate and 21st in scramble success rate. Nix, they're just coming off a win. They had a bye week, but coming off a win against the Browns. Had a really impressive 93-yard touchdown against cover 2 invert, where he threw one right down the middle. But I'm going to let you start with Bo Nix, Matt Harmon, and then I'll give you my thoughts. But what have been some of your takeaways with Nix and the Broncos offense so far this year?
Oh, well, the number one thing that's most impressive about Bo Nix is just his willingness and his ability to push the ball over the middle. Because I find that to be the most like admirable thing you can do as a quarterback. Yep. And we've been talking about this all season long with all the like hand wringing about cover 2 and we can't make vertical plays anymore with the 2 high safeties. Push it right down the middle of those bad boys, or right in that open field. If you just think about it, like a traditional cover 2 structure, there's going to be openings in the seams and over the middle and stuff like that. And that is exactly where Bo Nix, it's like he wants to do that. He wants to live there. And I think that's by far the most impressive and most admirable part of his game. There's definitely criticism you can make. I think he gets the Browns game is a great example of like the best and worst of Bo Nix, because I think he gets so like jittery in the pocket and he's moving around a bunch. It's just settle down and do what you want to do, which is you want to push that thing over the middle, deep down the field. And man, he can really do that. His connection with Cortland Sutton, similar to Jayden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. Again, there's one guy. There's one ego I have to satisfy in this room, or like one ego who deserves to be satisfied in this room. I don't know. Maybe the other guys are yapping or whatever, but
there's a pecking order. Yeah.
There's a pecking order. There's a clear-cut pecking order here.
Yes.
And that's why Sutton has been one of the most productive receivers in the league this year, because his best routes are those routes over the middle of the field. So him and Nix have timed up well there. I also think he's got a really good thing going on with Devon Vele, who's he's like 6'5", 215 power slot receiver. He has all the workout metrics of like a traditional X, but they use him in kind of like a Marcus Colston way to make the 100th pained Saints analogy with the Sean Payton Broncos. But really those are routes that Nix likes to throw really well. He's very impressive on those. I think this offense is really, at times it's like this offense has been really well designed. And I think they have, this is just juxtapose what's going on with the Bears this year and what's going on with the Broncos. Like there's an adult in charge in the Broncos. And because I think the first 4 weeks wasn't just like not impressed with Nix. It was just like a really bad offensive product, period.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, what is Sean Payton doing? And then by the time we get to, week 8, week 9, week 10, they've cut out so much fat from that offense, and they're really leaning into what Nix wants to do. They're also putting up, as we've talked about on the show, they're putting up some good guardrails for him, some screens and play actions and things like that. They don't ask him to do a ton. I'm sure you'll talk about it in their traditional drop back game. But I think the thing I'm most impressed with, and I love quarterbacks that do this, are the guys that have the stones to just rip it down the middle of the field. And Nix does that very well. Maybe I would say the best out of all of these guys, or the most like willing to do it out of all of these 4 guys we've just talked about.
Yeah, that's what, shoot, it's like, I think he has the most attempts, 20 more yards down the field. Yeah, I know, right? Which I'll talk about. No, I'm with you. He does a couple things that it's kind of funny with like him, the red alerts that I had, or red flags I had with Jayden Daniels, which is he didn't throw the ball over the middle much and he took a lot of sacks. Like Bo Nix did those things in spades in college, and it's carried over in the NFL. He's willing to throw the big boy throws when it's there. And he also is really good at not taking sacks. He has one of the best sack rates in the NFL right now. 4th best among qualifying quarterbacks, 4.1%. That's huge as a rookie quarterback.
Huge, yeah.
Because those are just, even if the offensive surroundings aren't good or they are really good, you are not kneecapping the offense. Like a sack is a drive killer for most offenses, unless you're like the Vikings. And then you just got Darnold chucking grenades every play. Or Mahomes with the Chiefs. Like this is just
2nd and 14. Who cares?
Who cares? Throw a deep dig. Throw up 50 yards. I know. So that's what has been impressive with me, is that his sack avoidance, being a good athlete, he's such a good runner, handling things just even like errant snaps. Like the center has a real tendency to snap balls to the left. He's actually really good at like snagging them. I know it's just a minor thing, but just speaks to his athleticism. He can zip any throw, which is what you're talking about, throwing over the middle. Like he's got real arm juice. Like he spins it. And I think he's very accurate underneath. Like when he has to nickel and dime, he can really put it on a guy's chest, give him a yak opportunity as well. You mentioned some of the stuff about maybe being a little skittish like that. And that's where I still want to see, this is my disconnect with him. He was an older quarterback prospect with a lot of starts. So, how much more room for growth is there? And just kind of how he was in college has kind of been like that as a pro, as far as sometimes in the pocket, he looks okay, but then sometimes like at the first sign of pressure, he starts just doing wonky things. His legs are just all over the place. His head's everywhere. And it kind of matches with the stats too. I would say kind of, it really does. Against pressure, he's pretty bad. and this is where I want to see the room for improvement with him. He's 35th in QB rating against pressure, 35th in yards per attempt, 31st in EPA per dropback, 34th in success rate. And this is a difference between like him and Maye, where Maye, I can attribute a lot of this to the offensive line just getting their butts kicked. With the Broncos, their offensive line is pretty good. And I think they're very sound with their rules. Are they perfect? Are they the best? I don't know if they're the best, but they're a top 10, top 12 unit. He's 7th in time to throw when he's pressured. He has the 4th lowest pressure rate when pressured. I know that sounds weird, but 4th lowest pressure rate overall. And he has the 3rd fewest amount of quick QB pressures against him. So again, it's not like he's getting under duress all the time, and that's not letting him build confidence. I just will say that when he's under pressure, his decision-making just goes every which way, which was kind of Bo Nix's reputation at Auburn, which is chaotic, crazy Bo Nix. And then he got to Oregon and it felt a little more safer, a little more sound. You saw those chaotic moments sometimes. And so I would say that's where I want to see some improvement with it, is that it's chill, just understand, go through your options, find the answers. Don't let your feet get out of whack, because that's when things start coming unraveled for him. And shoot, teams blitz him a ton. He has the most pass attempts against the blitz this year, and he's 32nd in success rate against the blitz, but he has the 2nd highest time to throw against the blitz. He has the highest rate of throws that take 4 or more seconds. So this is kind of even the video that made the rounds a few weeks ago. This is kind of what I was getting at, where it's like, I want to see him, be more selective when he's pushing the ball, like finding the right answer, pushing the ball, finding a good answer down the field. Like, because right here, he's 7th in air yards per attempt against the blitz, but he's 32nd in success rate. So even without watching him, if you just look at those numbers, that means he's throwing a lot of grenades. Like just going, try it. Let's see how this goes. So just finding answers within the offense, which is what I was trying to talk about in that video a few weeks ago, but just finding stuff that's in the flow of the offense, as opposed when it's just a drop back setting where it doesn't get into the chaos mode. And I think that's where I just want to see more out of him. And even the deep ball stuff, which I've seen plenty of stats about the deep ball regarding Nix. I think just too is that he has the 2nd most pass attempts for 20 or more air yards. But again, he's kind of more middle of the pack or below average as far as the success rate on those. So that's where, and not pushing the ball isn't just go balls and posts. Pushing the ball means digs, benders, stuff over the intermediate parts of the field, highs on the high lows. And I would just like to see that a little bit more often from him. I think sometimes he defers to, that guy's open, I'm going to hit him for 4 yards, as opposed to maybe, let it marinate for 1 count more and let the deep route unravel and then throw the deep route. So there's just some of that where I want to see more, because sometimes right now when he pushes the ball, it just seems a lot of like, all right, let's see how this goes, which how it felt against the Browns. Sometimes it's good. You get a PI, make a good throw, and then sometimes it just leaves some unevenness with him. But really watching him, I like watching him because I just like watching the Broncos offense a lot. And I do think he has improved. Like that first month, like you said, was awful. It was just god awful. And now he looks more like, oh, this guy can start. Like this guy is a starter in the NFL. And that's how I feel about him. But I just do have some concerns with some of the skittishness. He has the 2nd highest rate of throws on the run. And that's not because of, he does have a lot of bootlegs and everything, but that's because of him in the pocket. He steps up and starts running towards the line of scrimmage and then throws it. So I just like to see a little bit more calmness with him. And he has the best coach to do that. Like Peyton does a great job. So again, it's just more flow of the offense stuff, but it has been doing a much better job of it. The Raiders game was really good a couple weeks ago too, where he was doing that a little bit better. So it's good stuff. And I also might add that the Broncos are 12th in early down rushing success rate by running backs. So because the offense line is pretty decent. Nice little 40 minutes on the rookie quarterbacks. That was great. No, but I will say I've enjoyed watching all 4 of these guys in different ways. And that's, God, even if Penix and McCarthy don't work out, and I think I still am optimistic about both, holy crap, if we can get 4 good starters from one class, that is good for everybody.
There's no one from this group that I come out of this year feeling like, there's definitely some uh-ohs in Caleb Williams' game. But again, just the trajectory of where the team is going, but there's nobody that I come out of this like I wouldn't want to work with, again, even with the way Caleb has gone this year, I would be willing if I was one of these like hotshot, like if my guy Liam Cohen, they call him up, I'd be like, I'm ready for the challenge. I'm ready to see what I can do here. I'd be ready and willing to kind of jump into that whole process. Whereas like Daniels feeling great, Maye, feeling great. Bo Nix, I'd feel really good if I was Sean Payton. Like Sean Payton was like, letting it all hang out at the post-draft press conference, how excited he was about this guy. And like, I don't think anything and how he was smarter than everybody else. And if I'm Sean Payton, 14 weeks into this guy's rookie season, I would feel like I'm still smarter than everybody else. And yeah, if we can get one of Penix or McCarthy, and we could do a whole another hour on like what should the Vikings do at quarterback. But I mean, if one of those guys works out, yeah, I think this is a good class. Good class.
It's a great class. Yeah, and we're gonna take a quick break. And not only is this a good quarterback class, we're gonna be talking about the offensive skill positions, and the receiver class also was supposed to be pretty interesting, and we'll see how it has been going through their first year. All right, we are back with the non-quarterbacks on the offensive side of the ball of this rookie class. And we're going to go with Matt Harmon's fastball, the receivers, Mr. Reception Perception, crack those knuckles, get going, warm up the hands over there. This receiver class, though, was getting pretty hyped up. I'm with them, though. I had 3 guys as true blue chippers and a few more guys that I was like, yeah, I'll take this guy in the first round as well. We had a whole bunch of guys taken in the first round, a whole bunch of guys taken in the second round. Matt, would you say this class has lived up to the hype, or have you been disappointed or let down at all by this class so far?
It's tough because, when I did the rookie report on these guys for Reception Perception, I put a lot of like guys that were as expected, Of course, you got to remember when I'm doing that, I'm looking at them just in isolation. Like Reception Perception is all about like trying to divorce the wide receiver from the surroundings, and like quarterback and stuff, like basically it's got nothing to do with production. I do think from a production standpoint, this class has been maybe a little bit disappointing, but also the expectations were so high, I mean, maybe crazy high. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. was going as like a first round pick with the sicko best ball bros, like in fantasy football. He basically had to like be better than Puka Nacua, who broke a bunch of records last year, and one guy was
it's normal.
Ho hum, totally doable. And obviously receiver is even, I mean, it's a position that is so dependent on outside variables for production, right? Like that's why I exist. Okay. I mean, maybe I got personal life stuff, I guess, but I mean, why I'm doing what I do is because that is the reality of it. And I came away from this class feeling like, I think all the 3 top guys were basically as I expected from an isolation standpoint. Harrison, Nabers, and Odunze. I think they've all been fine. I think they've all been good. Some negative moments for sure. You mentioned some of the like mistakes in Rome Odunze's game. Lately, he has cleaned up like the drops and contested catch misses. Like over the last 4 weeks, I don't think he's dropped the pass. I don't think he's had like a contested catch miss, anything like that. I mean, his touchdown receptions this past week were like, oh, those were classic Rome Odunze plays. Like I wish I was the first one, especially. Yeah, almost to the point that like, because I was so high on Odunze as a prospect, I'm like, please catch it, please catch it, please catch it.
Oh, dude, man.
but at the same time, like,
I feel like.
Oh yeah, but like the same time, when you look at any of like Odunze's per route stats, and it's not pretty. Nobody in Chicago is pretty.
Yeah,
like that is so obviously the situation there. Harrison, I definitely think there's been some stuff that we've talked a lot about the usage and the deployment and things like that. Definitely, like if the Arizona Cardinals wanted to pay me, $300,000 to come per year to become be a useless consultant, I would be like, what if we just did a little bit of CeeDee Lamb stuff with Marvin Harrison Jr.? What if we just did that? Like I might be interesting because I do think, he's a couple of choice routes from the slot and stuff like that, as opposed to just let's make him a back shoulder receiver, because I just don't think that's really what he is. And with Nabers, I mean, he's a guy that was so generationally productive to start the year. But some of that was a little bit empty calorie stats, things like that. And the offense stinks. And he's also made his fair share of mistakes too. I mean, critical drops and critical moments. So nobody's been perfect at the top of this class. I think Brian Thomas Jr. has also, I mean, they're just now counting on him to be like the first read player. And like, maybe it took too long to get there, but I also think he needed to develop a little bit, iron out some kinks against zone coverage. Like the best rookie receiver, I think on film, has been Ladd McConkey. Like, and I actually am not sure it's been close. Like he's just been so good. but he's also, a slot receiver on a wide open depth chart with by far the best quarterback of anybody we discussed here. So that's obviously part of it too. But I just think in isolation, he's even been the best rookie receiver. So a lot of guys that, are kind of incomplete grades. I mean, everybody basically that went in the back half of the first round, Worthy, Pearsall, Leggett, even sort of Keon Coleman, just because we haven't seen him in a minute. I would say all those guys I could go one way or another on in terms of, I don't know that I see superstar potential for any of those players. I also am, I think there's some bottoming out concerns with some of them, but at the same time, I could also see them developing second year into kind of like good solid starters. My last point on this before I throw it back to you too is you mentioned we need to get 20 starts in with these guys. I think the great example, and I talked about this on my show, the fantasy show a couple days ago. Just think about what's going on with Jackson Smith and Jigba right now, and think about how people talked about him coming out of his rookie season. Yards per route run, not very good. Targets per route run, not very good. Not he's playing with 2 Pro Bowl receivers there in Seattle or anything. But now he is the most important player in the Seahawks offense.
Yeah,
in the whole offense, and it took half a season for a new coaching staff to say, hey, what if we did this with that guy because DK's out, and it took that to discover it. So all of these guys, I'm with you. I don't start to truly panic about any of these players that they might be bad until number one, unless the film is just an absolute disaster. And I don't think the film on any of these guys has been an absolute disaster so far until maybe halfway through their second season.
Shoot, even Leggett, who I had a ton of concerns about, I've been oh, okay, you got a little bit more polish to you. I think the Panthers are just well coached. Just got credit to everyone there. But no, even him, I love some of his profile, but then he had huge red flags for me. But now I'm oh, okay, you're not just a total bust where it's this is never going to work. The guy you basically replaced, Jonathan Mingo, and some are Leggett, I'm okay, you have a chance to be real with a chance to be real. It's a pie chart.
Sliding scale.
Sliding scale. 2% chance
Receiver
to start them.
is so important to talk about tiers within the position. Because it's there's number one receivers, and then I think there's superstar receivers, and then I think there are elite receivers. And that top group should be very, very, very small. It should be 5 to 7 guys, and that's it. We can't just be everybody gets it. Most guys are not going to get to that first year. Even the top 3 players on this in this class, Harrison, Nabers, and Adunze, I don't think any of them, and I think Nabers would be the only one if you just look at the stats that people might put in this group, I don't think any of them have played elite receivers because they're rookie receivers, they're not quite there yet. So I think we'll see if Harrison can maybe get there. I don't know, but even if we get some, I could very well see a lot of number one wideouts coming from this group. Definitely, I think McConkey's there. I think Thomas can get there, and I think all 3 of the top guys can get there. It's just I'm really curious about the Leggett types, and it's great that you brought him up because obviously he's getting slammed right now because he didn't catch that final pass that probably would have won the game, but he has had more. He's got to consistently catch the football better, no question about it. But he has also had a lot of really positive moments. And it is a little bit on my radar that they moved him to X receiver after the bye because I was so encouraged with how they used him to start the year, move him around off the line of scrimmage. And Thielen's back now. And I do think they eventually want to get Coker back in the mix when he's healthy. So obviously Deontay Johnson was their X receiver. That's a little bit on my radar, but for the most part, I do think he's played well this year.
Yeah. And then you already mentioned him, but Brian Thomas Jr. has been probably the most pleasant surprise. We've talked about this before. I think everybody that analyzed this draft had him as receiver 4 and kind of his own class. It was the 3 blue chippers, then Brian Thomas Jr., and then the rest of the group. He was just kind of that one guy that's take him in the teens. And I just thought he would take time. I thought now we might see some flashes out of him in December, last 8 weeks of the season. But now, right away, he was productive. He's literally the fastest receiver in the league, too. He's the fastest receiver, which is, I knew he was fast, but and he tested really well, of course, but his game speed, he is a true deep threat. Trevor Lawrence's deep balls were a lot better this year because it's a receiver stat. And if you wonder why Caleb Williams is bad at the deep ball statistically, well, doesn't have a lot of burners, and DJ Moore, they didn't really use that way for some reason. I don't know why. And that's, we spent 20 minutes on Caleb Williams. So, it could have been 2 hours trying to figure out what the hell is going on in Chicago. But no, this receiver class, I think what you said is great, is that there is chance at some real number ones here and just some fun role player types and just guys that like I'm keeping an eye on, like even guys that have been so inconsistent. I was expecting them to be inconsistent. AD Mitchells of the world, I'm not totally out on, like where it's like, okay, you've done enough where it's like, okay, I'm not like going like, oh God, all right, you have no shot at this. Or, well, maybe one guy, I'm still the curious case of Jalen Polk. I want to see the last few weeks. Maybe after the bye week, he's chilled out, but that he's in his own head. Well, how he's played the last few weeks is not indicative of what he was become, because it's just so different than his prospect profile and what I thought he was going to be. And I'm not just saying that, it's just me. Guys like Ricky Pearsall, the 49ers are just so wonky, and he's had a hell of an offseason.
Yeah.
And then even Xavier Worthy, who I don't think he's ever going to be what he was drafted to be, but I don't think he's useless. And that's a big difference. Like he's going to have a role, and actually a role that they're really figuring out for him with now that they have DeAndre Hopkins there. I think it's just a really fun receiver class. I'm with you. Dunze's now shown some moments where it's like, okay, that's what I expected you to be. That touchdown was a good example. Just some mental botches with him, which again, rookie, chaotic situation. Maybe the vets aren't helping him because he's Caleb's BFF, and they're maybe just going like, all right,
they're
screw
not.
you. It's a weird situation right there.
They're not.
I have theories on it, man, because that's just been, it's so messy and it's just so sloppy. And it really reminds me of the Jaguars with Trevor rookie year, but that was a worse version of it. But that's the same lack of details, like it's just weird, like just what's going on. So I keep an eye on, and Nabers explosive. And man, I think Harrison Jr. just does a lot of cool things. But what you're saying is that he's not a ball winner. He is Marvin Harrison Jr. He is his dad. It's just tall. And actually his rookie year stats and his dad's rookie year stats are starting to line up, which is really funny.
That's so funny.
Fun receiver class. I'm keeping an eye on him. Any surprises or any like day 3 guys or any guys that we didn't mention that you want to keep? You mentioned Coker from the Panthers, fun little power slot. He grabbed both of our attentions, but any other guys that maybe have caught you on?
I'm bummed about the Coker thing just because he's been banged up, and I really
like
hope
him,
that.
man.
And now I think it's just, let's continue this Bryce Young stretch, and like it has, like we got to make this good for the rest of the year, because he's playing so confidently now that you want to roll into 2025 on a hot streak with him. That I'm just hopeful that when Coker gets back, I'm a little concerned about this. I'm hoping that when he gets back,
keep him off the field because they want to kind of build the kind of chemistry.
I'm nervous about that, right? Because like Thielen's the best receiver here. Legette's their first round guy, and like David Moore's been around Canales forever. But I think that Coker and Thielen as like flanker slot guys that kind of play the same position, there also some redundancy there. So I'm hoping we still see him, because I think he's played well. I think Devon Vele's got a little something to his game as a slot receiver. I think a little something. But honestly, that's the one area I think the class has been. I gotta say, I'm super disappointed in Jermaine Burton, but I'm not surprised that I'm super disappointed in Jermaine Burton. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do about that? I would say that the where this class has just maybe been a little bit of a letdown is in the depth of it overall. But hey, like this is what's going to happen now around the league at wide receiver. Every single year we come in here with a draft prospect or the draft class saying this is a great class. And there's not like a shortage of good receivers in the league. Everybody's going to start to get squeezed at some point. If you look at like the league-wide wide receiver production, it's all down. And a lot of it is injuries, big time, like Puka Nacua missed time, AJ Brown missed time, Nico Collins missed time. Shoot, even, there's been a lot of injuries.
CD doesn't have Dak, so it's even quarterback
CD doesn't have Dak. Tyreek Hill has missed Tua for a long stretch of time. Even a guy like Rashee Rice, who was wildly productive to start the year, he's been out forever and ever and ever now. Like some of that has to do with, but I was tweeting about this last week that Zay Flowers and like George Pickens are like 4th and 5th in receiving. Like Jerry Jeudy is top 5 in receiving yards now. And some of that's the Jameis Winston fake stats and things, like the Jameis Winston Ponzi scheme. But I mean, at the same time, it's because these receiver rooms are all spread out now, because there's like there's 3 to 4 guys in a room that deserve targets. And when you start to get the Bear, we don't want to keep talking about the Bears, but the Bears are just a great example of like, I would love for just there to be 2 guys in there. But there's 3 guys that deserve the ball plus tight end and all this stuff. So it's going to be harder for the depth of players, even if they're talented, to be fully expressed. But that's why it's kind of like, I want to see a guy like Coker or maybe AD Mitchell get more time down the stretch. But again, Colts example is great. Who you taking off the field? Pierce has played his job well. Pittman's on a big contract. Downs, when he's out there, is like a legit
really
baller. It's tough.
It is. No, it's a great point. And I mean, more defenses run zone. How you beat zone is you need more than one pass catcher. Like you need guys that can, like, because the quarterback has to go through his options. So multiple guys have to be viable if more defenses are going to play zone. So it's just part of like what the ecosystem of the league right now. You're not going to get the true one-on-ones as much. And so it becomes a different, this is also some of our discussion on Marvin Harrison Jr. It's like, well, if you're going to get all the zone, like don't just get him double covered every play. Move him to the slot, open up his role a little bit. I want to see what happens with the Cardinals next year, but like, yeah, there is some stuff where I'm like, come on, just add one more layer. And you guys got it. Come on. You guys got it. You're so close. Going to a guy, the other pass catcher of this class, other receivers, Brock Bowers. Really good, right? I think that's really all I have to say. I mean, top 5 in every stat you look at as a rookie tight end, but he's been outstanding. Basically, they move him all over the field. It's really cool watching how they make sure he's on the really cool watching the Raiders offense is something I expected to say. But Norv Turner, I think, and Scott Turner have done a good job of, we want Bowers, because Michael Mayer is back, who is also pretty talented as well. Okay, Bowers is going to be the deep route on this combination while Mayer's the underneath guy. So some cool design stuff, but he's a pass catcher. He's not a tight end. Like he's probably the best pass catcher so far of this group. My offensive rookie of the year favorite, to be honest. But anything with Bowers or any other rookie tight ends, there's more blockers in this class. Yeah. But what stood out with you with Bowers?
I'm so glad you brought up the Scott Turner, Norv Turner, father son sitting up in the box there.
They're sitting next to each other in the box. I'm like, come on,
Nate, that could have been you. Okay.
Really could
have been you, man.
See, luckily I'm a passing game guy. My dad was an offensive line coach, so it was never that direct kind of like thing, I try to stay away a little bit.
yeah. But I don't know. You got two big guys. I don't know. You're not fitting up in that box maybe together either. That'd be a tight squeeze. But
I told you about that, right? When I was heavy and I knew I needed to lose weight, and everybody. So it went from like, oh, you used to play quarterback, tight end, maybe receiver. Oh yeah, I used to get all the time, and then I got really heavy. And people started going, what'd you play? Left tackle? Like, would you play D end? And I was like, oh, I got to drop weight. I got to start losing weight. Once I started getting, you used to play tackle and you lost some weight? And it's like, no, I was quarterback and I gained some weight. So yeah, we're doing better. More people think I'm a quarterback again.
Oh yeah. You definitely look like a quarterback now for sure. What I was going to say before I went down that little weird rabbit hole was that maybe because I didn't want to say this into a microphone, I really enjoyed like watching the structure of the Raiders passing game with the Turners up there.
I do too.
One, I've always been a little bit of a Scott Turner sicko in that I think he's got some really nice ideas as a pass game designer, and maybe like having dad right in the booth next to him, he's not acting up as much with some of the weird sequencing. Also, when they do weird stuff, I'm just pretty quick to blame it on Antonio Pierce, like fourth down decisions and things like that, because that's kind of how this season has gone. But I know that whole staff's probably going to get cleaned out, but I've enjoyed this weird little moment in time when the two Turners have been up in the box together, because a lot of what they're doing with the tight ends, because this is classic like Norv Turner stuff, is some of the creativity with tight ends and like traditional wide receiver routes. And yeah, man, I mean, I know this is frustrating people in fantasy right now that like want Brock Bowers to get 10 targets a game for their playoff runs, but it's a pretty big sign of respect from the league that you can take a nominal rookie tight end and like have him clear out space for Michael Mayer, who's a young talented player that they should want to develop, and like Jacoby Myers on some of these in-breaking routes. And like Myers just a damn good player. So like seeing all this together, I will say, look, Raiders fans, it's bleak for like the 20th time in your lifetime. I totally get it. It sucks. But this little moment in time where we've got like Bowers running these creative clear out passages for Mayer and obviously like Myers kind of working on the traditional Norv Turner in-breaking routes. It's a fun little moment in time. Unfortunately, like Desmond Ridder is going to be pulling the trigger on it on Monday night, and that's not going to be too fun. But I mean, maybe for you it'll be fun. We'll see. The Riddler's revenge on Monday against the Falcons. I'm probably the most fired up person for that game more than anyone else, just because I want to see. I watched that
it was the fourth game on my multi-view was the Bucks Raiders game. So I actually saw more of it than I intended to. And there's a lot of times where I was like, oh, that was nice.
Yeah.
That was a nice little design there. Even Ritter or AOC in there. I'm with you. I actually kind of like what they're doing, even if it's not all great. But other tight ends in this class, like AJ Barner's coming along for the Seahawks. Theo Johnson, I've liked when he has been healthy for the Giants. I liked him as a prospect too. And then Tip Ryman has come along a little bit for the Cardinals. They want to do a lot of heavy tight end sets, but they're using him more outside of just standing there and being an extra tight end. So they're actually like having him run some more routes and stuff. But I thought all those guys have really had some encouraging moments at tight end. And if you maybe want to ID them for a little dynasty kind of Trojan horse trade, those guys, maybe not Tip Ryman, but Theo Johnson, AJ Barner, maybe keep an eye on those two. Running back wise, I would just make this quick. It's like Bucky Irving. It's a lot of guys that have been like standouts in small roles. Trey Benson's come along a little bit the last month, but that's James Conner's show in Cardinals. Ray Davis has had some moments for the Bills. Love the Bills run game. Love how Ray Davis runs. Isaac Garendo, burner for the 49ers. Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen's like losing snaps to a different rookie running back in Isaiah Davis. And then like Tyrone Tracy for the Giants has had some nice moments, but kind of just more like just wanted to just shout those guys out, unless anybody else that you wanted to shout out there for the running back class. But that's kind of
well, I mean, the Allen and Davis dynamic is really interesting because I think both those guys can play, but they're also they're behind Breece Hall, who's like a young, should be in his prime
talented
running back
guy too. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, everything I just said about receivers and being too crowded, like 10x it for all these running backs, because basically all these dudes are buried, except Irving and Tracy. Bucky Irving's been awesome this year. I mean, he's been one of the most delightful runners in the NFL. Yeah. And I know I want to talk about the Bucs run game more when we get into the O-line section, so we can keep put a pin in that. Tracy is interesting because I think he is a guy that shows really good running back instincts and vision for a guy that is a converted wide receiver. Mm-hmm. And then you still see him get these like pass game chops. I'm always nervous about like this is the classic type of running back that gets lost in the shuffle because he shows a lot as a rookie. Like, man, that's really promising. Like, they should build around him a little bit. And then I think Dayball and these guys are all getting cleared out at the end of the year. A new staff comes in. He's a former 5th round pick. Like, they take and then it becomes a super crowded room. But right now, I mean, I think Tracy's showing you some real feature back stuff, run game, pass game. He's somebody that if I was a Giants fan, I'd want them to, don't even think about running back. I was talking with Sal Vetri today, and he was like, couldn't you just see classic overcorrection by the Giants? They let Saquon go. He dunks on them he dunks on him every single week. They actually find something in Tracy, but then I don't know, they trade for like Kenneth Walker and give him a big contract or something just completely random like that. I was like, I can actually see that exactly playing out. So if I was a Giants fan, I'd want them to develop Tyron Tracy as a starter.
Yeah, Giants fans should be looking at like, okay, who are their free agent running backs? Like, they should be like keen on like who they are available and just make sure they start doing a misinformation campaign. Just to make sure that they don't side them on all of them. Great call at Tracy though. Like, he's been like more impressive as a runner than I always love that profile. I'm a sucker for it. Call it the David Johnson carryover. Rashad White, I've always been higher on. Now I'm a little lower on, and now it's more like, oh, Bucky Irving's my new toy now. But it's, that's all I said going into this year. Is like, I wish Bucky Irving and Rashad White switched body types. If Bucky Irving had Rashad White's size, he might be a top 5 running back because just his vision, his tempoing and everything. He's like a good running back. Like he does those things well. It's just that he's smaller, like size wise. And you see him getting banged up a little bit now, but God, I really like him and really like that he's not only just been impressive like film wise, but the stats follow. Then it's easier just even for us to talk about and go like, no, he's good, right? And people look like, oh yeah, I have him fancy, he's good. And it's like, yeah, I told you. But no, and then I could tell Isaiah Davis is an Aaron Rodgers favorite because after he scored his first touchdown, Rodgers I think celebrated more than Davis did. It was like a little shovel pass against the Seahawks. So I do think that he's a Rodgers favorite, which is giving a little uptick in time, but he's a good player. I like him. And I think Braylon Allen's talented. So
Giants fan, Najee Harris is your like probably highest rated free agent running back. So you better the misinformation campaign that Nate was talking about, you might want to start. I don't know. You got to figure out a way. Maybe he doesn't like, I don't know, pizza or whatever. Yeah. You can't go to contact. You can't go to New Jersey. So make sure you start that misinformation campaign right now.
Good call on the Najee Harris thing. Yeah, I know. Oh man, we'll talk about the Steelers' offensive line in a sec. So, I can get into some of the Steelers' run game. Maybe it's better an eye test than actually it is. Maybe it's because of the running back. Maybe it's because who's toting the rock back there. But anyways, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to wrap this show up on the rookies with the offensive line, defense, and see you guys in a sec. All right, we are back. Bring this show home. We are going to talk about the non-offensive skill players, I should say. We'll start with the offensive line, keep it on offense, then we'll wrap up with some defensive players, just standouts, guys that impressed us, maybe some disappointments if we want to go down that path. Already talked about the quarterback class being pretty impressive. Talk about the receiver class having some hype and still having a chance to be impressive. Again, wait until year 3 before we make these things. But the offensive line class, I thought should have been super hyped up, and I think it was super hyped up. We saw a whole bunch of players go in the first round from this offensive line group, and I think they have lived up to a decent amount of this hype. I think there's been a lot of tangible players in this offensive line class, not only just for round 1, but day 2 and even day 3. There's been some real, not only just like, oh, this guy's playing, but like, oh man, this guy is like a needle moving starter. Like this guy is a plus starter or has a chance to be a plus starter. I was putting together a list of my notes of just guys. I was like, oh, maybe I want to talk about this guy. Came down to 15 offensive linemen plus 4 more guys that have been hurt. So that's 19 rookie offensive linemen that I thought are worthy of a note, and which is saying something. But yeah, Joe Alt, the right tackle for the Chargers, big, athletic, playing the right side right now because they have Slater at the left side. He's young. He's a pup. He needs to build a little bit of his hand strength, a little bit more of his pop. But man, he's you don't get 6'9" guys that can move like that. And I think it's like he's gonna be a big piece for them moving forward. J.C. Latham, the left tackle for the Titans, ironically was the right tackle for Alabama. Now he's a left tackle. He's a Bill Callahan beauty. Of course, project. Callahan probably loves him. Yeah, that's his ideal type of player. But him and Peter Skoronski have been a lot of fun on the left side for the Titans, especially in the run game. And then I think Latham, the twitchy, really, really fast guys can maybe get the edge on him. But he's been better in pass protection, especially as the season's gone along, where, he's such a big body that he's learning to kind of like, okay, I'll just run this guy past and everything. But I thought he's been pretty impressive. I can go one after another, but you have some thoughts on the offensive line? Because I could just keep going one after another because it has been a really fun group.
No, number one, I like that you mentioned Latham because I think the Titans' run game's been better maybe than expected. And I think when they get like Tony Pollard out on the perimeter, even on like some of those swing passes, he's a pretty big advantage on the edge there. Joe Alt too, like, my God, there's just such a disconnect between the tackle play and the interior play on the Chargers offensive line. Oh my God. Especially right guard, I think has been a bigger issue than anything else. Like, so that hopefully they can get Joe Alt a running mate next year. I'm sure you're going to want to talk about Zach Frazier, so I'll leave that one to you.
Oh yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I think everybody is talking about Bucky Irving, and I get it. He's been one of the best picks you can make in fantasy this year. He is, like I said, been a delightful runner, but Graham Barton has played really well for the Bucs, and this entire offensive line deserves credit. And this because Bucky Irving goes out of the last game. He's literally on the sidelines with a heating pad, on his back or whatever. And still the run game is good. I mean, it's the Raiders. I get it. But like Rashad White's a guy who like metrics were terrible last year and he's been having a much better season. So it's, Bucky Irving deserves a lot of credit for the kind of revival of the Bucs run game, but this is a unit that has gone from like the worst in the league to one of the best in the league. And you don't just do that just because you draft Bucky Irving. You also do that because Graham Barton's been really good. I think the system's been a little bit better with Liam Cohen, but primarily I just think like, why don't we draft a really good guy and put him at the pivot here of the offensive line? I think that's a lot of what they've done here. So he's been really good to watch. I also think sticking in the NFC South, like Fuaga was probably the guy that I feel like most people had biggest questions about. Like him is he a guard?
So glad you're talking
he gets
about
thrown as like the left tackle, but he's also somebody that I think perfectly fits that kind of like just very traditional Shanahan Kubiak zone stuff that they've been doing in New Orleans. And I'm curious to see what happens when that coaching staff inevitably gets turned over. Although there's so many Shanahan acolytes now at this point, we'll land another
chance.
Yeah, right. You're right. We'll probably land another one there. But I think he's played really well and fit that system well. So he's a couple of NFC South offensive linemen really stood out there.
No, I love that. Yeah, of course. Graham Barton, one of my favorite players in this draft. And then I love that the Bucs took him. I think he's been a true needle mover, already a good center. So great shout out there. Him and Luke Gedeke at right tackle has been tremendous for the Bucs when he's been healthy. And then, just so improved there. And that's a great shout out for them. There's just been, Fuaga was another one where I had more concerns on him than a lot of people did, where maybe I was like, really? You're going to put him at left tackle? I thought he could barely even play right tackle like at the pros. And this has been a good offense for him because this is what Oregon State did. Run first, play action. He can shoot out of his stance and really play forward. He's not a guy you want going backwards a lot. But going forward, he's very good, I would even say. But no, great shout out there because I had some concerns and he's kind of eased a lot of those. Olu Fashanu for the Jets has come along. Was a little shaky when he first had to play. And then now, I watched him against the Seahawks and I thought he was outright good. Have not studied him against the Dolphins yet, but I want to give him a shout out because I was high on him in the draft and really has come along, especially just the Jets are just so shaky. Even Roger Rosengarten for the Ravens has had some nice moments. He could be a little shaky in pass pro too, but man, there's so many guys here. There's 4 first rounders that basically have all faced injuries. Amarius Mims for the Bengals, Troy Fontenot, who I loved going in this draft. The Steelers draft, he gets hurt. He played the one game early in the year, maybe 2. And I was like, oh, yeah.
He was so awesome. I know.
So good.
I know.
So good. Jordan Morgan for the Packers, been in and out of the lineup. Tyler Guyton, the left tackle for the Cowboys, who I was a little lower on than other people. But Fontenot was supposed to be the gem of the Steelers class, and they took 3 offensive linemen. Then they took Zach Frazier, the center, who's been excellent. I love him. And I won't shut up about him because I really do think that he'll be an all-pro sometime in his career. And it's like, usually I wouldn't want to say that after a guy who played half a rookie year, but it's like, man, the smarts wise, pass pro, run wise, getting to the second level, cutoffs, like everything. He's just a really good center. So we've like 2 centers that I think have all-pro potential just from this class. And then there's Jackson Powers Johnson.
I was going to say, what do you think about JPJ?
I thought I liked him in the draft, and then I had some concerns. I also heard some things like, I was all right, maybe he can't handle playing center. But outside of his weird moment against the Chiefs at the end of the game, I actually thought he's been pretty good. I actually think he's been pretty sound there. He's so strong at the pivot point. I would still prefer him at guard. But no, I just think he's strong. He can move. Still have to see some protection stuff as far as how he shorts things out. But maybe that comes with time. I think Frazier and Barton have been excellent already mentally.
Barton especially, I think.
Yeah, they've been really good at just making everything sound and everything. None of this, neither Steelers quarterback, Fields or Russ, has had to handle anything. The rookie quarterback has handled everything, or rookie center has handled everything in that offense, which is just so.
Imagine you're Russell Wilson and you've played in the league forever, and you're credit to Russ. You know what you are. Or maybe Arthur Smith lets you know what you are.
Yeah, or Mike Tyan.
But you've played it. You've won Super Bowls. You've signed multi-million contracts. We'll let the rookie center kind of handle that. Russ, don't worry. You focus on just reading out the go routes. All right, that's it.
Find your one-on-one you want to take, Russ. That will be good there. Oh, and then Cooper Beebe, the center for the Cowboys, has been solid too. I know. So, I'll just list off some other guys. Dominic Pooney, guard for the 49ers, maybe been their most consistent lineman, especially outside Trent Williams.
Right.
Layden Robinson for the Patriots has had some moments. He's a little up and down. But the other Steelers offensive lineman that they drafted was Mason McCormick on day 3 in round 4. And he's been solid as a starter too at guard. So, man, I look at that line. I'm like, man, if they had Fontenot out there, wow, that is. And if he comes back healthy next year, that Steelers offensive line could be really something. Tanner Bortolini had some decent moments, got hurt again. And then I also want to bring up Seahawks right guard, Setoya Laumia. Oh man, I'm going to butcher that name every time. That one doesn't come off the tongue right for me. But he, after a rough first quarter against the Jets, has been outright good for a game and a half. I'd say the second half of the Jets game and then this Cardinals game. really has transformed this Seahawks team. Been part of it along with the center, Oluwatimi. But man, like he has been, and they drafted a different guy in round 3, Christian Haynes, who I liked. And they've been disappointed, I think, with his work ethic. That's just kind of reading between the lines with some of the press conference stuff. But Laumia, wow, he's actually been really something. So I just wanted to give him one last shout out.
They needed it so bad too.
Oh, so bad. I know. But yeah, the Seahawks, man, they're really putting it together. All right. No one really cares about defensive guys. Any guys want to shout out? Pass rushers have been a little this year outside maybe the Rams rookies, Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. Thought that both of them have had some really nice moments. They out to Latu, getting after the passer a little bit with the Colts. Still a little bit iffy against the run. Dallas Turner's getting more reps for the Vikings, but I don't know. He's kind of been inconsistent so far, but still want to see him. But I did want to give a shout out, pass rusher wise, to Chop Robinson for the Dolphins. Really come on the last month or so. Jonah Ellis for the Broncos, their 3rd round pick, has some real juice getting after the passer. Austin Booker for the Bears, a little 5th rounder. But those are the pass rushers that have stood out to me so far. Byron Murphy, defensive tackle, has kind of been up and down. He faced some injuries too for the Seahawks, but he has some real talent as well. Any defensive lineman that you just want to give a shout out to?
No, I'm glad you brought up Chop Robinson. He's 20 pressures since week 11. He's most among rookies by a lot, even more than Jared Verse. So he's definitely somebody that I thought would be a little bit more developmental. And to be fair, like we didn't really hear from him too much at the beginning of the year. And that Dolphins defense, I still haven't figured out and I've watched it back, and I still am kind of just confused as the product that we got from the Dolphins defense against the Jets last week, because I think that unit has played pretty well on balance. But Garrett Wilson kind of took Jalen Ramsey to the woodshed a couple of times, but they also blew a lot of coverages on the back end too, as well. So just that was disappointing. But I think Chop Robinson and his emergence alongside of Calais Campbell has been a nice little tandem to watch. So he's definitely Tavondre Sweat. Every single time you watch the Titans, I think is just a badass in the middle. Him and Jeffrey Simmons, badasses in the middle of the field. It's funny anytime. And I would say too, Murphy has come along the last few games, and that also kind of coincides with Leonard Williams. It's interesting, all of these defensive linemen that are playing well, like Chop Robinson. He's got Calais Campbell. Tavondre Sweat. He's got Jeffrey Simmons. Byron Murphy. He's got Leonard Williams. Like all these guys that I think are playing pretty well have kind of a running mate that's going along with them right now, which I think is interesting.
Really good call. God, I'm just looking back. I forgot Rook Rororo for the Falcons, who I didn't like at all going into the draft. Got taken before Johnny Newton, who faced injuries but has talent, Tavondre Sweat, and Braden Fisk. Whew. Oh, hopefully they don't come to regret that one.
Sweat had off-field issues right in the wet.
He was a top 20 talent, but his off-field stuff is like, he got a DUI month of the draft. I mean, a week before the draft or whatever. Yeah, that's as red flag as it gets. Just decision-making wise. And I think it was 9 a.m. he got that one too. So
not good. Hey, folks, don't get a DUI 9 a.m. All right. No, that's a bad idea. Just little life advice. I hope that this is not the only reason, but the first thing I think of whenever I think Rook Aurora was our buddy Jason Fitz hosted our draft show, that I was on last year. And he was so proud of himself that he could nail that every single time that he would say it, and he had so much fun saying it. And now that's what I think of when I think of Rook. I'm hoping that it's more than that in the long run, given some of the guys that you mentioned that he went ahead. A couple other rookies to shout out to, I think.
That's what because that's what it's.
Oh my
God!
Again, these are not. We should not be thinking of Jason Fitz and Scooby Doo when we're talking about an NFL player. Well, hopefully we get a little bit more of that, more than that in the long run. Obviously, a couple guys in the secondary to Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. Those guys are studs. Really good. Mitchell especially has just been so tight in zone coverage, particularly pretty good in man too, but I think especially when you're working against zone coverage. I mentioned that Terry McLaurin's one of the most productive receivers in zone coverage all year. Not the week that he went against Quinyon Mitchell. He was not one of the most productive receivers against zone coverage. I think Kamari Lassiter has been maybe a little bit, maybe some up and down moments, but I think there's some promise there. A team that puts their corners out on islands a lot and plays a lot of blitzes and things like that. So he's definitely somebody to shout out. I think Mikey Sandersill too. I thought he'd be more of a nickelback, but he's handled some outside responsibilities really well in Washington. Now that talk about like dudes being paired together, Marshawn Lattimore sounds like he'll be back this week. I'm interested to see like what that looks like.
No, great call. Yeah, Sandstrell has been really fun. One of my favorite players in the draft. It was just like, oh yeah, I thought he was going to be a dynamo slot. Like that's just kind of I pictured it done. The fact that he's not only just holding up on the outside, but like been a positive player is huge. I mean, that versatility is so huge, especially if they want to get creative. So good shout out there. Nate Wiggins has some nice moments for the Ravens. Terry and Arnold with the Lions. You know, you feel like you see him every game when he's out there because they man coverage and they feel like they get in fights on every
he's either tight in coverage or too tight that he's grabbing somebody. That's kind of how it goes with him. I also think didn't really know anything about Beanie Bishop much as a prospect, but I think he's had some nice moments for the Steelers defense too.
And then no, that's a good one. And the Chargers had a couple day 3 corners, Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart. Both had nice moments. Oh, Andrew Phillips was the other one for the Giants. Slot, fun little dynamo slot player. And then wrapping this up, Edgerrin Cooper, when he's been healthy, he's been dealing with a hamstring injury, been a good player, good linebacker, probably their best linebacker when he's been healthy. And then on the back end, Packers as well, Evan Williams and Javon Bullard. Bullard's played a little bit in the slot as well. But I did want to give Evan Williams a shout out because he's been a lot of fun for the Packers with him in the back end with Xavier McKinney. And then my guy, my safety one in this class, Malik Mustafa, for the 49ers. Him and Hufanga finally got to play together on the back end this past week. I want to talk about 2 headhunters. And they play quarters so much. So those in quarters, safeties have run responsibilities. So those guys fly up. And so it's actually a lot of fun to see. Basically, they're the Bash brothers in the back end. So I want to see when Hufanga is truly back from injury, Malik Mustafa. That might be something for next year, maybe this last month. But seeing those 2 on the back end, I love watching Mustafa. He's just a lot of fun. So I want to give him a shout out. Torrey Taylor, the punter. Maybe that's the last one I want to give a shout out to. But anyways.
Oh, man. Just what like the toughest look of all tough looks is, Caleb Williams telling the punter, like, you're not going to have to do a lot of punting here. And doesn't he like lead at one point to like led the NFL in punt yardage? Is that still the case? To be honest, Nate, I don't keep up with the punt yardage leaders that often, but I at least saw some like, always believe everything you see on social media. But I saw that as like a social media graphic a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if it's still true or not.
I'm not shocked whatsoever. Any Bear stat, I believe. I'm telling you, when I watched that 49ers game, and then I don't even know what the stat was. I just was something about sacks, and then I saw Jake Plummer, Caleb Williams, David Carr. And then that's all I needed to see. It was like, that's not a good stat.
Not a good stat.
That's not, I want to say it was like rookie sack rate or rookie sacks or something of that sort. It couldn't have been rookie sacks because then David Carr would be 1 for sure. But no, it was just not what you want to see up there. So everything in Chicago has just been want, but I do believe in Caleb. I do think there's a very, very live arm, very real quarterback there. A lot of good quarterbacks, a lot of good rookies. Very fun show. Thanks, Matt. That was fun. Thank you, Stone, for holding on with us here as we went through the entire rookie class, but we're closing it out today. Charles and I will be back on Thursday to preview week 15. We are in the last month. No more of those pesky bye weeks. We got fancy playoffs, baby. But we will be back on Thursday. Like I said, I am Nate Tice. You can find me at Nate_Tice. Matt, where can they find you? What are you working on this week? 20 podcasts? Yeah.
Matt Harmon _BYB, in addition to a bajillion podcasts still as the fantasy season winds down. I'm actually working on a piece talking about some of that league-wide wide receiver production. We'll be I write 2 columns every week in addition to all the podcasting, but I'm forgoing the traditional preview piece and looking at kind of big picture this wide receiver stuff. So I hope that should be out. If not, probably not Wednesday evening, maybe like Thursday morning, people could check that out.
Matt James Brown Harmon, the hardest working man in football showbiz. Wrapping it up today. Like I said, we also send in your mailbag questions, football301mailbag at yahoosports.com. Charles and I will get to that at the end of the Thursday show. Also, if you want to jump the line, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You guys have been doing a great job. I've seen a couple in there that we're going to peruse through. So also subscribe to us, follow us, rate us 5 stars. If not, just yell us on YouTube, and you can still subscribe to us and follow us and not rate us 5 stars, but I hope you rate us 5 stars. Also watch us on YouTube on the Yahoo Sports YouTube channel. Thanks to Brent and Stone behind the scenes. Thank you all for listening. Hope you have a great week. See you guys on Thursday.